So tonight we're going to be looking at the Sallie House.
Sounds good.
In Atchison, Kansas.
Yeah.
And this is one of those cases that even if you are not super into the paranormal, you've probably heard of it.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's been featured in so many different shows and books and articles.
Absolutely. It's one of the most well-known cases for sure.
So what we had to work with here are a lot of the historical records about the house in the area. And then we also have eyewitness accounts from people who have either lived in the house or investigated the house.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, we've got that really famous investigation from Zach Bagans and his team. So.
Oh yeah, that was a wild one.
Yeah.
I mean, he's known for having some pretty intense reactions.
Right.
But even he seemed genuinely freaked out by the Sallie House.
Yeah. So we're gonna try to unpack all that and look for any connections or patterns or anything that might help us answer the big question here.
Right.
Which is this haunting just the spirit of Sallie, this little girl who died in the house?
Yeah.
Or is there something more sinister?
Because that's what makes this case so interesting.
Right.
You have the classic haunted house elements, the child ghost, the, objects moving the cold spots. But then you have those really dark, aggressive events that don't quite fit that narrative. The physical attacks, the feeling of oppression that a lot of people report. It's almost like there are two different hauntings happening at once.
It is really strange. And I think to really get into it, we should start with Sallie's story because, I mean, it's a tragic story.
Yeah.
It's a 6-year-old girl dying during a botched appendectomy.
It's awful.
And this was back when appendectomies were done in people's homes a lot of times.
Yeah.
And so she died right there in what would become part of the house.
Yeah. And that right there is fuel for a haunting. That kind of sudden, traumatic death, especially for a child. It's, it's classic ghost story material.
Yeah. And it does make you wonder if that initial trauma kind of imprinted itself on the house.
Exactly.
And maybe set the stage for everything that came after.
And it's not just the death itself. It's the age of the victim.
Yeah.
A child that young, their energy, their spirit is still so pure, so innocent.
Right.
And when something like that is cut short so tragically, it can create a really powerful residual energy.
Yeah.
And that energy can linger for a long time.
So would you say that child spirits are more common?
I mean, in hauntings, I would say that they're definitely more noticeable. People tend to be more sensitive to the energy of children, whether they're living or dead. There's just something about that innocence that draws our attention. And when a child's spirit is present, it can be really heartbreaking. You hear these stories of EVPs, of children crying or laughing, or people seeing apparitions of children. And it's hard not to feel for them.
Yeah, especially in a case like this where the circumstances of the death.
Exactly. It adds another layer of tragedy to it.
Okay, so we've got Sallie. We got this really sad beginning to the story, but the Sallie House is known for so much more than just, the sad little girl ghost.
Yeah.
There's a lot of other activity there.
There is, and that's what makes it so fascinating. It's not just one type of haunting. It's like a whole spectrum of paranormal phenomena.
Yeah, so let's jump ahead a few decades and talk about the Pickman family because they're one of the families that lived in the house and had some really intense experiences.
And they documented everything meticulously.
They did, which is great for us.
Yes.
Because it gives us a really detailed look at what was happening.
Absolutely. Their case is almost like a textbook example of how hauntings can escalate over time.
Okay, so set the scene for us. What was the Pickman family like?
All right, so we've got Tony and Deborah Pickman, young couple. They move into the Sallie House in 1993. Yeah. And at this point, they're totally unaware of its reputation.
Oh, wow. So they had no idea?
No, they just thought they'd found this cute little house.
Oh, man.
In a nice, quiet town. They had no idea what they were getting themselves into.
So what were some of the first signs that something was off?
Well, it started with those classic little things, lights flickering, doors opening and closing on their own. The dog would bark at nothing. The kind of things that you could almost explain away.
Yeah, just blame it on the old house.
Exactly. But then things started to get a little more intense.
Oh, okay, like what?
Well, Tony started reporting feeling cold spots in certain areas of the house. Then he started getting scratched.
What?
Yeah, like unexplained scratches on his arms and back.
Oh, wow. So this wasn't just like a feeling.
No, these were physical marks. And then it got even worse. He started feeling like he was being shoved.
Shoved?
Yeah, like by an unseen force.
Oh, my gosh.
There was one incident where he was in the basement.
Okay.
And he felt this strong push from behind that almost sent him tumbling down the stairs.
That is terrifying.
It is. And it's a pretty clear sign that we're moving beyond just, a playful spirit or residual energy. This is something that can interact with the physical world.
And target specific people, it seems like.
Exactly. Which is another layer of this whole case that we need to unpack.
Yeah. All right. So we've got the scratches. We've got the shoving. Anything else?
Yeah, there's more. Objects started moving on their own.
Okay.
Like Debra would leave a candle burning and come back to find it completely melted.
Wow.
Like it had been exposed to some intense heat source.
That is so strange.
And then there was this mobile they had hanging in the nursery. And it would spin on its own even though there was no breeze or draft.
So this wasn't just like things falling off shelves.
Yeah. No, this was like directed movement. Like something was deliberately interacting with these objects.
So far we've got those classic haunting signs, like the flickering lights, the cold spots. But then you have these physical attacks on Tony and objects moving, and it's all escalating, it sounds like.
It is. And this is all before we even get to the most famous piece of evidence from the Pickman's experience.
Which is?
The photograph.
Oh, yeah, the photograph. Tell us about that.
So Debra was taking pictures around the house one day, just, documenting their lives.
Okay.
And when she developed the film, there was this one photo that showed a faint figure of a young girl standing in the nursery.
And this photo had been analyzed like crazy.
Oh, yeah. People have gone over it with a fine-tooth comb.
And what's the consensus?
Well, there's no definitive answer. Some people believe it's a genuine photo of a ghost. Others think it could be a double exposure or some kind of trick of the light.
But it's definitely creepy.
It is. And it adds to the whole mystery of the Sallie House.
Yeah. Okay, so the photograph is out there for people to look at and decide for themselves. But the Pickman story doesn't end there, does it?
No, it doesn't. It actually culminates in a pretty terrifying event.
What happened?
Tony was at home alone one night.
Okay.
And he was in the living room when he saw this bright light coming from the nursery.
Oh, no.
He went to investigate, and when he looked into the nursery, he saw a fireball.
A fireball?
Yeah, like a ball of fire just hovering near the crib.
Oh, my God.
He said it was like nothing he'd ever seen before.
So that was kind of their breaking point.
It was. That was the final straw. They packed their bags, and they left the Sallie House for good.
I don't blame them.
No. I mean, after seeing a fireball in your baby's room, I think it's time to move on.
So we're already seeing this real shift in the energy of the haunting, right? It goes from those kind of classic signs to actual physical attacks, and then this full-blown fireball. I mean, that's something else.
And it makes you wonder what could create that kind of energy.
Right, because if we're thinking about this in terms of like a spectrum of paranormal activity, you've got your residual hauntings, which are kind of like echoes of past events.
Right.
Then you've got your intelligent hauntings, where it seems like there's an actual spirit that's aware of its surroundings and can interact with people.
And sometimes even manipulate objects.
Right. But then you have this fireball.
Exactly.
Which seems to go beyond even that.
It does. It suggests a level of power and energy that's pretty rare in hauntings.
And it makes you wonder if we're dealing with something that's not just a human spirit.
Right. It could be something else entirely.
Something more powerful. Something maybe even malevolent.
Exactly. And that's where things start to get really interesting.
Yeah, because if we're looking at Sallie as the main spirit in the house, then how do we account for this fireball?
It doesn't quite fit the profile of a typical child spirit.
It doesn't. So that's where we need to start considering the possibility that there might be multiple entities at play here.
And that's a whole other can of worms.
It is. But it's a can of worms we're going to open.
I can't wait.
All right, so stay tuned. We'll be right back after the break.
Sounds good. Okay, so we left off talking about the Pickman family and that terrifying fireball.
Yeah, that was a lot to process.
It really was. I mean, it makes you wonder what kind of entity could generate that much energy.
Right, because we were talking about this spectrum of paranormal activity. And the fireball seems to fall outside of that.
It does. It's almost like a whole other category of haunting.
So how do we even begin to understand something like that?
Well, I think we need to step back for a moment and consider how hauntings work on a more fundamental level.
Okay, so like the basic mechanics of it.
Exactly. Because if we can understand the underlying principles, then maybe we can start to make sense of these more extreme events.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So what are we talking about here? Like energy fields or something?
Essentially, think of a house like the Sallie House as a container.
Oh, yeah.
And over the years, it's absorbed the energy of everyone and everything that's been inside it.
Okay, so like the emotions, the experiences, the good and the bad.
Exactly. It's all imprinted on the environment.
And that energy can linger.
It can, and it can manifest in different ways.
So is that what we call a residual haunting?
Yeah, that's one type of haunting. It's basically an energetic echo of past events.
Okay, so like if someone died tragically in a house, their energy, their emotions might still be present.
Right, and a sensitive person might pick up on that energy.
Okay, so that explains things like cold spots or feeling a presence.
It can, but it doesn't explain things like physical attacks or objects moving on their own.
Right, because those seem to imply an intelligence.
They do, and that's where we get into the realm of intelligent hauntings.
Okay, so what's the difference?
Well, in a residual haunting, the energy is basically passive. It's just there. It's like a recording that's playing on a loop.
Okay.
But in an intelligent haunting, the energy is active.
Active. How?
It's aware of its surroundings, and it can interact with the living world.
So it's like there's an actual spirit or entity that's conscious.
Right. And that spirit might be attached to a specific location.
Like the Sallie House.
Exactly. And there are a few reasons why a spirit might become attached to a place.
Like what?
Well, a common one is unfinished business.
Okay. So like they died suddenly and they think they need to resolve.
Right. Or maybe they were wronged in some way, and they're seeking justice or revenge.
Okay. Or it could be something as simple as they just really loved that place.
It could be. They might have had a strong emotional connection to the house.
And they don't want to leave.
Exactly. And in some cases, a spirit might not even realize they're dead.
Oh, wow.
They might be trapped in a kind of loop, reliving the same moments over and over again.
That is so sad.
It is. And it's one of the reasons why some paranormal investigators believe that it's important to try to help these spirits move on.
Okay, so that makes sense for like a human spirit. But what about something like a demon or a negative entity?
That's a whole other level of complexity.
Yeah, because those don't seem like they'd be attached to a specific location.
They might not be. They might be drawn to certain types of energy.
Like what?
Well, negative energy is a big one. Fear, anger, sadness.
Okay, so a place like the Sallie House, with its history of tragedy and trauma.
It would be like a beacon to a negative entity.
Yeah, that's a creepy thought.
And it raises the question, could a negative entity be masquerading as a child spirit?
Like using Sally's image as a disguise.
Exactly, because think about it. People are more likely to let their guard down around a child.
That's true. We tend to associate children with innocence.
Right, so a negative entity could use that to its advantage.
So it's like a wolf in sheep's clothing. Exactly. It's a classic horror movie trope for a reason. But let's play devil's advocate for a moment. What if there isn't a separate negative entity?
Okay, I'm listening.
What if it's all Sallie? But her energy is so complex that it manifests in both childlike and terrifying ways.
That's an interesting theory. And it's not entirely implausible.
Right, because we're talking about a child who died a very traumatic death.
Exactly. And that kind of trauma can have a profound impact on a spirit.
So the anger, the fear, the confusion.
All of it could be fueling these more aggressive events.
So it's like her spirit is fractured.
It could be. And those different fragments are expressing themselves in different ways.
And that could explain why some people have positive experiences in the Sallie House.
Right, like they feel a playful presence or they hear a child laughing.
While others have terrifying encounters.
Exactly. It's like two sides of the same coin.
And it makes it really difficult to determine what's truly going on.
It does. And that's why the Sallie House continues to fascinate paranormal investigators and enthusiasts alike.
It's a mystery with no easy answers.
And sometimes the best mysteries are the ones that stay unsolved.
Well, let's delve into some of the specific evidence that's been collected at the Sallie House. Because for fans of haunted locations,
yes,
there's nothing quite like diving into some chilling EVPs and mysterious photographs.
Agreed. So let's start with the EVPs, because the Sallie House has produced some of the most compelling EVPs ever recorded.
Okay, so for those who aren't familiar with EVPs...
Electronic voice phenomena.
Yeah, what are we talking about here?
So EVPs are basically recordings of voices or sounds that aren't audible to the human ear at the time of the recording.
But they show up on playback.
Exactly. And there's a lot of debate about what EVPs actually are.
Right, like are they really spirit voices or is it just random noise?
That's the big question. Some researchers believe they could be stray radio waves or electromagnetic anomalies or even psychological phenomena.
Okay, but the Sallie House EVPs seem to be a little more than that, right?
Yeah, they do. There are some EVPs from the Sallie House that are so clear and so distinct that it's hard to dismiss them as just random noise.
Like the one that Zach Bagans' team captured.
Oh, yeah, the Help Me EVP.
That one is chilling.
It is. It's a child's voice, and it's very clear. It's saying, help me.
And then there's that giggle afterwards.
Yeah, that giggle is what makes it so creepy.
It's like it's mocking or something.
It is, and it makes you wonder if there are multiple entities present.
Right, because you have the childlike voice, which would align with Sallie, but then you have this other voice, this darker presence.
And there are other EVPs from the Sallie House that are equally disturbing.
Like what?
Well, there are reports of growls and hisses.
Oh, wow.
And even voices speaking in languages that no one can identify.
So it's like the house is amplifying all sorts of unseen voices.
It is. And it's one of the things that makes the Sallie House so unique.
So it's not just about Sallie.
No, it's about something much bigger.
Something that we might not even be able to comprehend.
Exactly. So we were just talking about some of the EVP evidence from the Sallie House.
Yeah, and I think what's so fascinating about EVPs is that they're like this direct line of communication to whatever might be in the house.
It's like you're hearing their voices, their thoughts.
Yeah, and it's not filtered through our own perceptions or interpretations.
Right. It's raw, unedited evidence.
Which makes it all the more compelling.
It does, and it's one of the reasons why EVPs are so controversial.
Right, because there's always that question of authenticity.
Exactly. Could this be a hoax? Could it be something else entirely?
But when you hear an EVP that's clear and distinct, and especially if it responds to a question or a prompt, it's hard to dismiss it as just random noise.
It is. And that's what we see with a lot of the Sallie House EVPs.
So it's not just a Help Me EVP.
No, there are others that are equally intriguing.
Okay, give us some examples.
Well, there's one EVP where an investigator asks, "Are you Sallie?"
Okay.
And the response is a very clear yes.
Wow.
And then there's another EVP where an investigator asks, "What do you want?" And the response is a chilling whisper that says, "To play."
Oh my gosh, that is so creepy.
It is, and it gets even weirder. There are EVPs of what sound like growls and hisses.
Like animal sounds.
Yeah, almost demonic in nature.
That is so disturbing.
It is. And it suggests that there might be something more than just a human spirit present in the Sallie House.
Yeah, it's like we're getting glimpses of something that's beyond our understanding.
And that's what makes this case so compelling. It challenges our beliefs about what's possible.
Okay, so we've got the EVPs, we've got those terrifying eyewitness accounts.
Yes.
What about photographic evidence? Is there anything there?
There is. And this is where things get a little more subjective.
Okay, how so?
Well, photographs can be easily manipulated, so it's hard to know for sure if what we're seeing is genuine or not.
But there have been some interesting photographs taken at the Sallie House.
Oh, definitely. The most famous one is the photo that Deborah Pickman took.
Right, the one with the faint figure of a girl in the nursery.
That photo has been analyzed and debated for years.
Yeah, and there's no consensus on whether it's real or not.
But it's a chilling image nonetheless.
It is. And even if it is a hoax or a trick of the light, it still adds to the overall mystery of the Sallie House.
It does. It's like another piece of the puzzle.
And then there are other photographs that haven't been as widely circulated, but that show strange anomalies like orbs or mists or shadows.
And these photos are often taken by people who aren't professional photographers.
Right. They're just everyday people who are visiting the house.
Which makes them even more intriguing.
Because it suggests that anyone can capture these strange phenomena.
Exactly. You don't have to be a paranormal expert.
So it's like the house itself is inviting people to document what's happening.
It's possible. It's like it wants its story to be told.
And that story is one of tragedy, mystery, and the unknown.
Exactly. It's a story that continues to fascinate and terrify us to this day.
Well, I think we've covered a lot of ground tonight.
We have.
We've explored the history of the Sallie House, the different theories about what might be causing the haunting.
The EVPs, the photographs, the eyewitness accounts.
Yeah, we've really delved into this case.
And I think it's safe to say that the Sallie House remains one of the most compelling haunted locations in the world.
It is.
Yeah.
And it's a reminder that there's still so much we don't understand about the paranormal.
And maybe that's a good thing.
Yeah, maybe some mysteries are best left unsolved.
Maybe so. But it's always fun to try to solve them.
It is. And we hope you've enjoyed joining us on this journey.
Yes. Thanks for listening.
And if you have any thoughts or theories of your own,
or any personal experiences,
we'd love to hear from you.
Feel free to connect with us on social media.
Until next time, stay curious and keep exploring the unknown.
And remember, the Sallie House is out there waiting.